Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my news show. Today is 21st of August. Now it's 4 past 11 in the morning, Moscow time. I'm a bit late due to some technical issues, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news and some major developments that Russian media and public is paying attention to, and hopefully you will find this episode informative, interesting, and useful. And if so, dear friends, please like the video and leave some commentary in the comment section, not just in the chat, but in the comment section too. It is important to at least try to influence algorithms on the both of my channels that I'm streaming simultaneously on YouTube and Rumble. Also, after new segment, I will join community chat for a little while. I will just remind you, dear friends, that you can use the super chat or round feature on Rumble to highlight any question or commentary that you want. And yes, that's about it. Also, dear friends, almost forget, I have an announcement to make, which is that this evening at about 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. Moscow time, I will have a second live stream with a guest. With a guest that you most likely are familiar with. I'm not gonna make a further announcement on that, but I will have a military expert and a political commentator as a guest on a show. Hopefully, it will work out. There will be no technical issues or any other reasons to postpone the program. So yes, this is the announcement, by the way. Today, this evening at 10 p.m., most likely I will have a second live stream with a guest that many of you are familiar. That being said, dear friends, let's start with the news segment now. And because quite a few members of our community watched my second live stream yesterday, that was not really announced during the first update, although I arranged the stream some 1.5 hours before it started. But nevertheless, yesterday's second update only has like 1,200 views for this moment. So therefore, of course, I will repeat some of the news that I shared yesterday in that second live stream. And first of all, dear friends, let me share with you this report from RIA Novosti and many other media outlets also paid attention to this report that Russian hacker group Killnet managed to gain access to database of Kiev regime's defense ministry and received information about actual casualty numbers on side of this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Let me give you details on that. So more than 1.7 million Ukrainian armed forces fighters have been killed or missing since the start of special military operation. Initially, this was reported by Telegram channel Mash, citing the database of the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces, which was hacked by Russian hackers. We have quote from that publication: Ukraine lost 1.7 million servicemen during their special military operation. Mechanical mistakes in the translation of these pages sometimes are quite annoying. So yes, 1.7 million casualties on part of Kiev regime's forces. According to Mash channel, hackers got hold of files containing the full names of their militants, information about their place of their death or disappearance, personal data, contacts of their closest relatives, and the photographs. So basically, this was a major breach of security of Kiev regime's defense ministry, general staff, and all the data that Kiev regime has now is in Russian hands also. And of course, this hacker group, Killnet, will share additional information in upcoming days. So in 3 years, by the way, since the beginning of a special military operation, Ukraine have lost 1.7 1,721,000 people, to be more precise, military personnel, that is, soldiers and officers. We have some specifics here. 118,000 troops were lost by Kyiv regime in 2022, 405,000 troops in 2023, 595,000 troops in 2024, and 621,000 in 2025, which is not ended yet. It's only August, right? So this year continues, and the number of losses of Kyiv regime's forces will increase in 2025. The Killnet group confirmed to RIA Novosti news agency that it hacked the database through their work computer of their head of the logistics department, whose last name was Chernykh. The information was stored in their OneDrive cloud resources. We are talking about photographs of their dead militants, their passports, and military IDs, death certificates, and the dog tags. In addition, hackers gained access to data from the command of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, as well as a list of countries that supplied military aid and weapons during this conflict to this terrorist regime of Zelensky. And I guess many of you are potentially shocked to hear this horrendous number of casualties on part of Kyiv regime, although, by the way, number of military experts, including Western ones, by the way, for example, US retired Colonel Douglas McGregor, at least on several occasions that I personally watched, for example, on Judge Napolitano's show, actually mentioned their losses of the Kyiv regime to be over million. Right, and now we have more specifics on that. There are speculations now on internet until Killnet hacker group will release full data. This speculation is going to continue. How many military personnel of Kyiv regime is designated as missing? Speculations are that from 300,000 to 500,000 are missing. Million plus are killed as a result of hostilities. Yet again, in upcoming days, we're going to find out more details about this, of course. And, well, this is the result, by the way. This is the result of anti-human policies of globalists, Western ruling class, that orchestrated their coup d'etat in 2014 in Kiev, put in charge neo-Nazi terrorist formations, and then began provoked not just civil war in the eastern regions, but basically began sacrificing residents of this former Soviet republic. 1.7 million personnel of Kyiv regime's armed forces are killed or missing. Also, by the way, millions upon millions of civilians have been displaced as a result of this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. And we have a clear indicator that if globalists and globalist controlled or globalist puppet regimes in the collective West are not stopped, they will continue this proxy war as long as they can, and they will sacrifice literally everybody on Kyiv controlled territory. And if they have to, then they will begin sacrificing citizens of EU and NATO member states too. This is a clear warning and a message, not just for residents on Kyiv controlled territory, but also to citizens of EU and NATO. That's what their political elites are, actually, right? And this hacker group, Killnet, also released the information about countries that were supplying weapons to this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. It's more than 14 countries have sent weapons and munition to Ukraine since the start of a special military operation, including Israel and Georgia. The Telegram channel Mash writes, citing the database of their general staff of the armed forces of Ukraine, which was hacked by Russian hackers, This is the entire European Union, by the way. All members of the EU were sending weapons and munition, and they're assisting one way or another this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, including Hungary and Slovakia, by the way. About Slovakia, we know about it. Government of Fico accused previous regime, basically, of demilitarizing Slovakia. That's the volume of weapons and munition that was transferred by previous Slovakian government to Zelensky's regime. But in regards to Hungary, well, reports were that Hungary was not participating in this weapon supply, weapon shipments. But well, this database of armed forces of Ukraine says otherwise, which is well, something to keep in mind. And also, it is unfortunate and grave mistake on part of government of Georgia that this former Soviet republic was also involved in weapons and munition supplies to Kiev regime, according to this database. But anyways, let's go through this list of the countries. So there is an entire European Union, by the way, in this list. Also Albania, Iceland, Macedonia, Montenegro, Norway, US, Australia, Canada, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Georgia, Turkey, and Israel. And obviously, Moscow will keep in mind this information while conducting diplomatic or political or whatever relationships with the states and the quasi-states, right? Also, dear friends, to continue, we have this report from RIA Novosti that Russian militaries liberated 3 more settlements on the line of contact. Information is confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry. Let me give you some specifics on that. So units of a center group of forces continue to advance into depth of their enemy defenses and liberated the settlements of Sukhitskoye and Pankovka of the Donetsk People's Republic. Report says Ukrainian armed forces on the area of responsibility of center group of forces lost more than, in just previous 24 hours, by the way, lost more than 405 military personnel, 2 combat armored vehicles, 7 cars, 3 artillery pieces. Same time, the Vostok or East group of forces of the Russian military also liberated the settlement of Novogeorgievka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. And in previous 24 hours on this on sector of the responsibility of East group of forces, Kiev regime lost more than 200 military personnel, 2 tanks, 10 cars, Western-made multi-launch rocket system, field artillery gun, and 2 electronic warfare stations. So 3 more settlements, liberation of 3 more settlements have been confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, although in reality, I'm quite sure more settlements were liberated, but being tremendously conservative institution, Russian Defense Ministry, of course, always, almost always takes quite a lot of time before confirms the progress of the Russian armed forces on the battlefield. So therefore, today, day after today, I mean tomorrow, we might learn more about further progress of the Russian armed forces on the battlefield. And let me show you on the map, dear friends, where these settlements are located. So when it comes to DPR, this is there are 2 settlements. You can see on your screen now these stars, by the way, star icons. That's the location of their settlements that were liberated. Both settlements geographically are basically in between Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration and Konstantinovka or Slavyansk-Kramatorsk, one might say. And progress of the Russian armed forces in this area is clearly very visible, isn't it? Very visible. So this is the settlement of Sukhetskoye, and this is a settlement of Pankovka. And you can see this gray zone, by the way. This gray zone is a sort of contested area, but in reality, this is the area that Russian armed forces are mainly in control. Now. It's only a matter of time when Defense Ministry will actually acknowledge this progress of the Russian militaries. Also, dear friends, reports are coming in that Russian armed forces further intensify military operations inside the Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. Russian DRGs are operating relatively freely, by the way, in both these cities, and it is more and more noticeable that Russian DRGs are present there, including in the central parts of Pokrovsk, by the way. All the southern western flank, or the settlements on the southern western flank from Pokrovsk are under full Russian control. And if we take a look at the Mirnograd, by the way, city is basically in operational encirclement. Same can be said in general about Pokrovsk-Mirnograd direction. They have only one road left, this E50 road, for supply and support. I mean, Kiev regime's garrison in this area, and this E50 highway, or this only supply and support line that Kiev regime has left, is also under Russian fire control, under Russian artillery control, under Russian drone control, and the Russian DRGs, by the way, obviously are operating in this area too. If they are operating inside the Pokrovsk and the central parts of it, then obviously one should assume that Russian DRGs are even more present along this highway to make sure that Kiev regime's garrison in this Pokrovsk and Mirnograd not gonna receive any reinforcement and resupplies at least as freely as Kiev regime would like. Also, dear friends, during the night time, during the last night, Russian armed forces conducted quite a large-scale drone and missile strikes, long-range drone and missile strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime. I can give you some details on that as I posted on my Telegram and Twitter X page this morning. So last night, the Russian armed forces carried out another long-range targeted strike on the military and logistical infrastructure of the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Strike drones and missiles, including hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, by the way, at least 4 of them, according to independent sources, reached their targets in the areas of Kiev, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Pavlograd, Lutsk, Lvov, and also in Transcarpathia region, and many others, by the way. There was a number of other directions. Too, in Sumy was, for example, also Russian strikes. So relatively large scale, long-range precise strike by Russian forces, and I believe quite successful, because all morning, by the way, videos and photos are circulating on internet about aftermath of these strikes. Military infrastructure, military airfields were targeted, logistical points, and also factories of military industrial complex of Kiev regime that still are operational. And one of those factories were actually targeted in Transcarpathia region, for example. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that according to latest briefing of Russian Defense Ministry, during the nighttime, during the past night, Russian air defense systems on duty intercepted 49 drones that were launched by Kiev regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. Specifics are that 21 drone was intercepted over the Rostov region, 7 drones over the Voronezh region, 5 over Belgorod, 4 over Crimea Peninsula, 3 each over the Bryansk and Kaluga regions, 2 each over the Oryol region, and the Black Sea, 1 each over the Kursk and the Tula regions. On Thursday morning, several settlements in the Voronezh region were left without power due to drone attack, and on the Rososh Sakhanovka section, rail traffic was suspended due to drone attacks that Kiev regime and NATO were conducting. Railway communication has been resumed by this moment. Delayed trains have set off on their routes. Also, dear friends, let me give you this report, which is obviously, I think, interesting and important one, that United Aircraft Corporation of Russia has delivered another batch of Su-35S multi-role fighters to Russian aerospace forces. You can see on your screen now planes that were transferred to Russian Air Force. And just about a week ago, by the way, there was also additional report about delivery of to Russian aerospace forces, delivery of new batch of Su-34 Frontline bombers also. So Russian military-industrial complex is working 24/7, by the way, to increase speed of delivery of the weapons and the weapon systems, munition that is ordered by Defense Ministry. And when it comes to Su-35, if Su-34, in my personal opinion, is one of the best, if not the best, strike aircraft at this point in service anywhere in this world, then Su-35, yet again, in my personal opinion, is our best 4++ generation fighter jet in service. Literally best, by the way. I don't think even latest F-15 can compete with the Su-35S. You might disagree with me, but that's my opinion. And also, dear friends, Russian president congratulated the veterans of the Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated the Russian nuclear industry's workers and the veterans on their 80th anniversary, noting that the development of the nuclear shield has become a key factor in their country's national security and technological progress. You can see on your screen, by the way, one of the Russia's mobile intercontinental ballistic missiles that are equipped with their multiple nuclear warheads, right, and can obliterate, any point anywhere on this planet, right? And well, Putin is of course correct. By the way, Russian nuclear shield is, I would say, main deterrent force that Russia has at this point. But I will also add, by the way, that after recent terrorist attacks by NATO, by US and UK on Russian nuclear triad, when nuclear airfields were attacked, where airfields with their strategical bombers on it were attacked. After that, I think it might be necessary Russian nuclear deterrent to be reinforced. And I think only way this might happen is if something will happen to nuclear triad of United States and United Kingdom. If France was involved, then I hope French nuclear submarine will sink somewhere. That will make me happy for sure, right? I don't know about you, but I have no mercy for my enemies, man, or enemies of my country. So it is what it is, right? So I think it is necessary, personal opinion, yet again, Russian nuclear deterrent to be reinforced, and that can be done only if something will happen in to nuclear capabilities of UK and US, and also France, if France was involved too in those attacks on Russian airfields, right? Or if Russia will actually strike military facilities of US and UK in retaliation for those strikes. It has to be done, by the way. Otherwise, we can talk about Russian nuclear deterrent all we want, but it is clear that US and UK, they don't give a damn about it, right? Otherwise, how would they ever dare to attack Russian nuclear triad? They just simply don't care, and they think Russia will never use extreme force to strike back. And I think it is necessary to bring those so-called elites in US and UK to their senses and strike back. That again, you might disagree with me, but that's what I think. Congratulations, obviously, to workers and the veterans of Russian nuclear industry. They definitely play a crucial role for safety and security of the Soviet Union in past and the Russian Federation since the collapse of Soviet Union. No doubts about that. Also, dear friends, of course, we have to talk about topic of Ukrainian topic of Ukrainian de-escalation or resolution to the Ukrainian crisis. Since the Alaska summit, Washington at least pretended that U.S. leadership is interested in achieving lasting peace. Of course, we cannot trust nobody from U.S. political class. It's obvious, but nevertheless, we have to pay some attention to reports that are coming in from U.S. And we have this one, for example, that Rubio, head of State Department, is to hold the talks with the security advisors from the UK and Europe. So U.S. Secretary of the State, Marco Rubio, who also serves as an interim national security advisor, will hold their sensitive diplomatic conversations with the national security advisors from the Ukraine and Europe. New York Times reported, citing a high-ranking U.S. administration official. The newspaper said that Rubio's meeting with his colleagues from Ukraine and some allied European countries will take place on Thursday, that is today, and will discuss the details of their peace deal on Ukraine. The media outlet did not specify as to where and in what format the talks will take place. And, well, you don't have to guess. It is obvious that sides will most likely discuss the topic of security guarantees, globalist and globalist control regimes in Europe. That is, first of all, of course, UK, France, Germany, and others. They are desperate, by the way, to keep US into this proxy war against Russia, and they are trying hard to persuade Washington to be actively engaged militarily in providing this sort of security guarantees for a Kyiv regime, whatever that means. And interpretation of the security guarantees is very different from it's a very different from statements of European leaders and US leaders, right? They are not on the same page, seems to me at this point. Washington was kind of direct that US not going to send the troops into Ukraine, despite their many statements from London and Paris or Berlin that they are ready to send their troops, right? But rumors are that globalists did manage to persuade Washington to provide air cover and logistical assistance if European NATO troops are deployed to Kyiv-controlled territory. And this is a tremendously dangerous development, obviously, by the way. If they will go ahead with that, that will mean a full-scale, most likely, that will mean full-scale war between Russia and NATO, because Russian leadership, time and again, were very persistent in a position that for Moscow, for Russia, there is no circumstances in which presence of NATO troops in this so-called Ukraine will be acceptable. So that means NATO troops, if they arrive there, will be designated as combatants and will be eliminated. And potentially, of course, while deploying their troops into Ukraine, NATO basically is provoking full-scale war with Russia, which is going to be end of everything. Literally end of everything, right? There is no humanity after full-scale war between NATO and Russia. There is nothing after that, right? That will be end of history, basically, for a human race on this planet. Anyways, let's continue. And on the matter, on the same topic, by the way, we have this report that Chief of British Armed Forces heads to Pentagon with a proposal ready to send troops to guard Ukraine's skies and the ports, but not to the front line. Yet again, it does not matter where they're going to send their troops, on the Dnieper River, in Kyiv or in Odessa or elsewhere. For Moscow, presence of NATO troops on Kyiv-controlled territory is completely unacceptable. Only exception, theoretically, in the future can be Western Ukraine, that used to be part of Poland, Hungary, and Romania, and I believe will be reclaimed by these countries. At least, I believe their political elites are dreaming about, right? But rest of the territory is definitely out of conversation. Moscow will never ever allow presence of either British or German or French or U.S. troops on territory of this former Soviet Republic. Right? Let's see what we're gonna learn. Of course, this personality, chief of British Armed Forces, probably will have a meeting with his colleague, counterpart in US, and maybe he will also participate in that meeting with Rubio. We might find out today a little more about it. RIA Novosti is also reporting that US is not yet planning to take on obligations to guarantee security for a year. United States will not commit to security guarantees for Ukraine until it understands what is required to end the conflict. US Vice President J.D. Vance said in an interview with Fox News, and well, it is good that at least some people in US leadership are not in a hurry to make some strong statements in regards to any sort of guarantees for Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. And it is tremendously important US to stay out of this story completely, whatsoever, right? Because yet again, globalists are very keen. We all seeing this, isn't it? Globalists are very keen to keep US in, and if Washington will sign up for any guarantees for a Kyiv regime, then globalists will just provoke resumption of confrontation at any given point and will basically force US to get engaged against Russia militarily, which is going to be end of US, obviously, or also end of everything. Because if anybody thinks that US might survive war with Russia, then I would recommend to those people to read some more about nuclear capabilities of Russia, about nuclear winter, and the rest. Right? They're gonna be no winners in nuclear war, right? And it will be better if societies in the West will pay a little more attention, or much more attention, to the risks that they all are facing due to criminal regimes that they have in their countries and their criminal activities. Kommersant newspaper is also reporting that well, Russia, and this news gonna cause some controversy, I guess, because some commentators, some media outlets will definitely try to paint a different picture compared to what Russian foreign minister actually said or meant. But nevertheless, we have this report with the headline that Russia agrees to security guarantees for Ukraine from China, the US, UK, and France. So Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia agrees that Ukraine's security guarantees should be provided on an equal basis with the participation of China, the United States, Great Britain, and France. At the same time, he stressed that this issue cannot be resolved without Russia, by the way. And one should keep in mind that Lavrov didn't say that Moscow is okay with deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine. What he basically says is that, well, it will be understandable if a UN Security Council, permanent members of UN Security Council, will be engaged in this matter. And all countries that he mentioned are permanent members of the Security Council, right? The US, UK, France, from a hostile side, and China and Russia, right? From right side of history. That's how it is, and no one should take this statement of Russian foreign minister as Moscow is okaying deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine. No, this is not the case, and Russian leadership was very consistent in its position. right? In regards to literally every topic that is connected with achieving sustainable peace in Ukraine, right? Also, J.D. Vance, Vice President of United States, during the interview with Fox News, spoke about a possible meeting between Russian president and Zelensky. I can give you some short clip, by the way, of statements that Vance made.
So President Zelensky walked into the Oval Office. I was chatting with him, with the president, with some of the senior Ukrainian delegation. I said, Mr. President, so long as you behave, I won't say anything. And he just chuckled a little bit. And it was a good little icebreaker. I mean, and in some ways it's very simple, but in some ways it's very complicated. Number one is Ukraine wants to know that it's not going to get invaded again by Russia. It wants to know that it's got territorial integrity long into the future. The Russians want certain pieces of territory, most of which they've occupied, but some of which they haven't. So that is really where the meat of the negotiation is. The Ukrainians want security guarantees. The Russians want a certain amount of territory. Again, we finally got the details. We're working on them, but we haven't figured everything out. And I don't think that we should force. We shouldn't say that they can't sit down until you figured out every little detail. Sometimes them sitting down is what facilitates figuring out those details.
And I have to disagree with Vance on that last point. I think there is no reason whatsoever for Russian president to have a meeting with Zelensky if there is no preliminary agreements reached by experts from the two sides or the delegations of the two sides. Russian president is quite busy, isn't it? And definitely has no time to waste it while meeting with Zelensky and discussing topic in general, right? What can be done, what cannot be done. No, this is not the way things should be done, by the way. No. Let the delegations from two sides have a talk to reach a certain understanding, right? And then, Russian president has no issue, as far as I can tell, and he was very clear on numerous occasions that he has no issue with meeting with Zelensky or whomever if it's necessary, right? But first of all, agreements has to be reached, right, by experts of the sides. And obviously, as I said yesterday, by the way, and many times before, if what is the point for Russian president to meet Zelensky when if Moscow wants to know position of globalists or globalist puppet regimes in Europe, that is London, Paris, Berlin, and others, then there is foreign ministries in place, right? They can communicate. Also, Russian president can take a phone and call his counterparts from those countries, or leadership of those countries can call the Moscow. What is the point to have a conversation with Zelensky? Who the hell is Zelensky, man? He is a puppet, right? Starmer, by the way, Prime Minister of UK. It's a ironic, tragic, and somewhat funny too, if you think about it, that Starmer, by the way, Macron, Merz, and the others in Europe are puppets of the globalists, right? And Zelensky is their puppet. So you tell me what is the point for a Russian president to have a meeting with the puppet of the puppets? It does makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, no, man, no. It's crazy, right? And these people in Washington better stop dreaming about some nonsensical stuff, man. And if you are serious about pulling out US from this proxy war against Russia, and I hope they are serious about it, then they should grow balls and confront globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, because that's what their enemies actually are. That's whom their enemies actually are. That will be better. Also, dear friends, let me give you this short video when Vance spoke about kind of issuing a warning for Zelensky to behave during their recent meeting between Zelensky and Trump in White House. Just let's listen to it.
He walked into the Oval Office. I was chatting with him, with the president, with some of the senior Ukrainian delegation. I said, Mr. President, so long as you behave, I won't say anything. And he just chuckled a little bit, and it was a good little icebreaker. I mean, what the president's trying to do, meaning our president is trying to do, is bring a 3.5-year, very brutal conflict to a stop. It's killed way too many Ukrainians, way too many Russians. It's completely transformed the economy of Europe and of big parts of Asia. We just got to get back to peace.
So yes, he kind of warned Zelensky that if he will behave, then well, Vance will have no issue with him. Although, by the way, let's remember that Zelensky during that infamous row that he had with Trump and Vance and others in White House during his previous visit there, he called Vance a bitch in Russian, right? So Vance has good nerves, by the way. I mean, I would definitely not shake hand with Zelensky if I was on his place, but well, Vance is a different, right? Anyways, difference. Let me before I continue, let me just notice that this media project, dear friends, only exists as long as I have your assistance, your support to maintain this project, to be able to work full time on that. And if you like my work, if you think I'm providing some interesting, informative content, please consider to become a sponsor for this project. Please consider to support. You can do it with donation through PayPal or Boosty platforms. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page or page that I have on Boosty. Also, there is a crypto option for that. And during the live streams, because I'm streaming simultaneously on both platforms, on YouTube and Rumble on my channels, during the streams, you can use a super chat feature or rant feature on Rumble to donate and there simultaneously highlight any topic, any question or the comment that you have. And also, you can become a premium subscriber on Rumble. Everything counts, of course. Everything helps to keep this project alive. So all the links, if you're considering to support, are on this video in description box, and there will be in the pinned comment after the stream on YouTube. Many thanks, of course, to everyone who helped in past and who continues to support now and keeps me in this field of news and political commentary. Thank you. That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some more news. And next is this report that Netherlands will deploy 2 Patriot air defense systems, and there are about 300 troops to Poland starting December 1st, according to Dutch Defense Ministry. The move is described as being in support of Ukraine, reinforcing NATO's eastern flank, aiming ongoing conflict. And you know what my take is? I think this potential deployment of air defense systems from Netherlands to Poland is actually not to support Ukraine, but to defend Poland in case during the Polish invasion of the Western Ukraine, the regime's forces, especially neo-Nazi formations, will still be able to conduct long-range strikes on Polish territory. Poland will need all the air defense systems that they might get from NATO countries, because I have no doubts, dear friends, I have no doubts that Warsaw Defense Ministry of Poland, their political leadership, intelligence services are working hard to prepare for reclaiming the territories of Western Ukraine, at least 70% of it that used to be part of Poland before Second World War. And this deployment of air defense systems from Netherlands is actually to support Poland, not to against Ukraine, right? Not to support Ukraine for sure. My personal take, by the way, maybe I'm wrong on that, I don't know, but that's what I think. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that, well, European leaders expect Ukraine peace talks to fail, according to Politico's report. And well, they not just expect Ukraine peace talks to fail, but they hope for that, because yet again, globalist puppet regimes in Europe did not demonstrated even the slightest that they are actually interested in peace. If you take a look at their statements, their steps, policies, you will agree that you have enough indicators that they are all about for the prolongation of this war, because they still believe, by the way, no matter how difficult it is to believe in that, but they still seems like believe out of their stupidity that they can somehow achieve strategical defeat of Russia, then to divide Russia in number of parts, and then to establish control and rob all of their territory from all the resources, right? So they are clearly out of touch with reality, and I'm afraid only way, I'm honestly speaking, only way to bring them to their senses, to force them to face the reality is if and when Moscow will actually take action, strong action, and this will happen. This will happen. Unfortunately, despite a certain progress that was reached between Moscow and Washington in recent days and weeks, unfortunately, still there is a tremendously high probability, in my personal opinion, that we're going to see further escalation of this conflict, and we are not yet anywhere close to actual peaceful resolution, because yet again, main driving force behind this proxy war, that is globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, are refusing to accept reality, to face the reality, and to de-escalate. That's how it is. Also, we have this report from TASS news agency that Ukraine's nationalist wing keeps Zelensky from making concessions in talks, according to experts. So Vladimir Zelensky is wary of making concessions in talks on resolving the Ukrainian conflict for fear of reprisals from radical nationalists. Kees van der Veel, a Dutch historian and political scientist and former University of Sussex professor, told the TASS news agency, and he is correct, by the way. He is correct. It's he, isn't it? Kees. I don't know if this is a man's name or woman's name, but this professor is correct. Zelensky and his inner circle definitely are fearing nationalist formations that already threatened Zelensky personally to get executed if he will agree on the concessions. And this threat was made by neo-Nazi formations of Ukrainian fascists openly, right? So this professor definitely has a point, and without personal security guarantees from his masters, I don't think Zelensky will actually sign up for any concessions, out of fear, by the way, because yet again, these neo-Nazi formations that are operating on Kiev-controlled territory, like Azov, Kraken, Aidar, and others, they are basically autonomous terrorist organizations that are only listening to Western secret services. First of all, British, although US secret services too. I mean, MI6 and CIA, first of all. They don't care about what Zelensky has to say, what defense minister of Zelensky's regime has to say, or anyone else. These Nazi formations, by the way, even before 2014, were basically created and trained, and since then are run directly with direct orders by MI6 and CIA. Let's make no mistake about it. So, yes, if London and Washington are not happy with Zelensky, for whatever reason, by the way, they can actually authorize this order, basically, to their neo-Nazi puppets on Kiev-controlled territory to take him out. And this might happen, actually. This might happen at one point, and you guess what Western capital is going to say, or who they're going to blame for that. Of course, Russia, isn't it? You know, but it is a point. It is a good point that this political class, so-called political class on Q-controlled territories, definitely fears the no-Nazi formations. No doubt, no doubts on that. Also, the French Sky News has reported that Europe does not have nearly enough troops for a Ukraine deterrent. So to create deterrent force in Ukraine, about 300,000 troops will be needed. And the armies of the UK and France together are capable of providing only a fifth of this number, writes Sky News. Europe does not have necessary number of soldiers to create a deterrent force in Ukraine. Military expert Sean Bell has said to Sky News, or stated according to Sky News, according to Bell, the deployment of troops along Ukraine's approximately 1,600-kilometer border with Russia would require about 100,000 soldiers at the time, which, taking into account rotation, would increase the required number to 300,000. He noted that the British Army makes up to 10% of the necessary contingent, and France could provide another 10%. Other European countries can hardly provide troops for such a mission due to the risk of escalation and their own proximity to Ukraine. And to escalate, by the way, let's be real here, to escalate this proxy war with Russia on the next phase, globalist puppet regimes in Europe don't have to deploy 300,000 troops that they might don't have. Deployment of even 20, 30,000 troops or 10,000 troops, by the way. Deployment of any contingent, basically, of NATO troops, I think will trigger a strong Russian response, and the world will face exactly that next phase of escalation. So therefore, information that European countries lack militaries for deployment is not really something that will indicate that globalists or their puppet regimes gonna de-escalate. No, they want escalation, and until Russia basically will smash their freaking faces, I mean globalists and globalist regimes, until Russia will use force, extreme force if necessary, to bring them to their senses, I don't think we're going to see true de-escalation, man. It's just not happening. If US leadership was a little more clear, if US leadership confronted openly globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, and they had such opportunity on numerous occasions, right? Then the situation could be different. But because US leadership is not that keen to confront globalists, they're not going to be in a position to have an initiative in these developments. Globalists going to be leading the charge, right? And they are a destructive force, by the way, destructive force that have to be neutralized. It is what it is. Also, dear friends, if anybody had any doubts that Russia will not tolerate presence of NATO troops on Kiev-controlled territory, we have a statement from Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, who wrote basically on one of his platforms in social media that their brainless Gallic rooster can't let go of idea of sending troops to Ukraine. It's been explicitly stated, no NATO troops as peacekeepers. Russia won't accept such a security guarantee. But their hoarse, pathetic bird continues to crow to prove it's king of the coop or soup. Medvedev wrote, he is mocking Macron, obviously. Of course, all of you knew straight away that he was talking about Macron, French president. Rooster is national symbol for whatever reasons in France, isn't it? in former Soviet Union, if you call someone a rooster or the chicken, man, you're gonna end up in having problems, right? But in France, rooster is their like national symbol. Uh, Strange, but nevertheless, it's their business, right? So Dmitry Medvedev was quite clear that no NATO troops. That's it, right? And this brainless rooster Macron should keep his mouth shut while he can. That's the assumption that I am making. By the way, Medvedev did not went as far, but I will, right? So RT is also reporting that Russia is ready to upgrade level of direct talks with Kiev. The statement is coming from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Russia is ready to raise their status of its delegation level peace negotiations with Ukraine. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has announced his remarks follow the summit between President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump in Alaska last week. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, Lavrov said that their idea was floated by Putin following his phone call with Trump on Monday, which went on as the U.S. president was holding talks with Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky and several key European leaders in the White House. It is unclear whether Lavrov's reference to elevating the delegation status was hinting at the possibility of future Putin-Zelensky talks. Lavrov added that the new status of the delegations would also imply their review of a separate block of questions to address the potential aspects of the conflict resolution alongside military and humanitarian issues. And yet again, it is unclear what Lavrov means. Medinsky going to be replaced by some other more high-ranking official in Russian delegation that was participating in Istanbul talks, or Russian president gonna lead delegation. It is unclear, really, but I personally hope Putin will waste no time on meeting with Zelensky, man, because yet again, if Putin wants to know position of globalists and globalist puppets in London, Paris, or Berlin, or anywhere else in collective West, then he can take a phone and call them, right? So why would he meet with Zelensky to find out what the globalist position is? Who the hell is Zelensky, for God's sake, man? Nobody, right? A freaking pawn, not even pawn, by the way, only dust on this geopolitical chessboard. So why should Russian president waste time while having conversation with that nobody? I don't know, but well, statement of Lavrov received certain attention in media and the public here in Russia, and so I'm sharing it with you. TASS news agency is also reporting that Russia imposes retaliatory sanctions against the UK. So in response to sanctions and the UK's confrontational course, Russia has banned entry to 21 people. The list is published on the website of the Russian diplomatic mission, and Russia is always tries, by the way, always tries not to initiate any further escalation, right? But because these European states, they are all about war and destruction, right? They are dreaming about destroying Russia, capturing Russia, robbing Russia and Russian people, right? So therefore, they're constantly escalating, including in terms of additional sanctions against Russian citizens, Russian companies, and so on. And Moscow is reacting, and another 21 citizens of UK, high-profile individuals, are banned to ever visit Russia. And by the way, this is a big deal. Some might say, well, no big deal. No, it is a big deal. If you are a businessman or if you are a politician, by the way, when you are banned from for life from visiting one of the major superpowers in this world, this is quite a setback, right? So therefore, it's important. I would not say that this is nothing. Anyways, let's continue with some other regions of this world. And well, Israel, by the way, has approved a controversial E1 project division of the West Bank into two parts. Project aimed to split the West Bank, isolating East Jerusalem, that is mainly populated by Palestinians. Israeli activists described the project as a knockout blow for two-state solution. So Israeli fascists and fascist Israel continues to do what fascists do, by the way. They continue genocide of the Palestinian people, and they continue destruction of the Palestinian state. And on this very topic, we have also this report that the Israeli army begins operation to capture Gaza. So Israeli military spokesman Brigadier General Efi Defrin announced the start of the IDF's military operation to invade Gaza City, adding that the IDF's continuing military operations throughout the Gaza Strip and on the outskirts of Gaza are part of Operation Gedeon Chariot. And well, unfortunately, there are going to be even more casualties among civilians as a result of this crime that Israel is committing, crime against the Palestinians, crime against their humanity. And unfortunately, this evil force that Israel is, by the way, fascist Israel is, not going to stop until world community will somehow manage to get together and force Israel to get demilitarized and denazified. Until that day, fascist Israel will maintain this fascist state that it is in right now. Majority of Israeli citizens will be still indoctrinated in also all this evil fascist ideology that they have when they only consider themselves to be humans and the rest of them to be some subhumans or and a kind of nonsense, right? And they're not gonna stop. They're just simply not gonna stop. They will genocide Palestinians in Gaza. They will genocide Palestinians in the West Bank. They will then go and genocide Lebanese people, Syrian people, Jordanians. They might went after Egypt also. They will genocide literally everybody, by the way, until they are stopped. And to stop them, the world has to acknowledge that modern Israel is a fascist state, and the majority of Israeli citizens are indoctrinated in inhuman, sickening fascist ideology, and they have to undergo denazification process. It's just too obvious, by the way. I don't think I have to further elaborate on that. It's just too obvious, by the way. Some 70 to 80, according to some reports, even higher number of Israelis, by the way, are supporting everything that IDF did in the Gaza Strip. That is, they are supporting genocide, by the way. So they have to, and only way someone can actually justify this crime that Israel is committing against humanity is if those people, those Israelis, are indoctrinated in some sick ideology, by the way. This is only way how they can justify this. No decent human being will ever justify intentional killing of hundreds of thousands of civilians, by the way, that Israel committed. And based on, I remind you that based on data of and information of Lancet, Western, by the way, well-respected medical journal Lancet, experts are suggesting that due to actions, and this report was almost a year ago now, right? And since then, I guess significantly, we don't have to guess, by the way. Of course, casualty numbers have increased tremendously, right? But at the time, Lancet reported that actual death toll due to actions of the Israel must be around from over 100,000 people, about potentially 200,000 people. And recently, there was also an additional reports that actual casualty numbers is over 300,000. Death toll, by the way, that is. And only either mentally ill individual or someone who is indoctrinated in fascist ideology can ever justify such a tremendous, horrendous crimes that Israel is committing, right? So therefore, no questions in my mind, Israeli society has to undergo denazification process, and Israel, modern Israel, as a fascist state, has to be stopped, has to be demilitarized, by the way, and transformed into a normal state in the borders of 1948. That's it. And world community has to manage to do it. It's they has to, bother. We all have to do it, bother. World community has no other option but to face the reality and take action, because these fascists not gonna stop. By the way, they will kill literally everybody. They will kill as many people as they can, because no one is stopping them, and they don't consider us to be people, man. Right? Not just Palestinians. They don't consider none of us, by the way, to be humans. RT is also reporting that the US changes a stand on 2008 Russia-Georgia war, so-called five-day war, by the way, that was provoked by US again because they ordered their puppet regime in Georgia at the time, that was led by Saakashvili, to first reignite civil war in South Ossetia, and then to target Russian peacekeepers that were present in South Ossetia under their UN mandate, by the way. And that's what Saakashvili did. At the time, president of Georgia, he ordered Georgian forces to open fire on Russian peacekeepers. That was an act of war, obviously. Moscow had to react, and that's what Moscow did there. Medvedev was a president of Russian Federation at the time, and he issued the order for Russian militaries to get engaged, and rest is history, right? So the US has, for the first time, refused to endorse condemnation of the Russia for the 2008 war with Georgia, following a closed-door session of the UN Security Council on Monday. Denmark, France, Greece, and the UK and Slovenia issued a statement denouncing Russia for the brutal invasion of their South Caucasus countries 17 years ago. US did not sign their statement, despite having done so in the past. And well, I don't know. This change of position of US is connected to what? Is it really real that Washington truly wants to pull out US from this proxy war against Russia that West is waging, sacrificing people of this former Soviet Republic, Ukraine now, or something else is happening? But nevertheless, interesting change in stance of Washington, for sure. And I remind you, dear friends, that even though Western propaganda is constantly pushing this false narrative that Russia was unprovoked absolutely, and for no reason attacked Georgia, in reality, situation. I was in Georgia at the time, and I was leading news agency, by the way, so I know quite well what was happening. And to be more precise, it was not even 8th of August by Georgian time, although it was 8 already in Russia by Moscow time. But in Georgia, it was about 11:30 in the evening on 7th of August when media, TV stations, by the way, began their programs with their breaking news that Georgian armed forces have opened massive artillery fire on direction of settlements in South Ossetia that were controlled by local militia forces, Ossetian militia forces. Fire was opened on a number of villages on Tskhin Valley, city capital of South Ossetia, on Tskhin Valley itself, and central part of city was burned down, by the way, and destroyed almost completely as a result of this fire, which was a war crime on its own, obviously, right? And that's why I'm saying, by the way, while authorizing Georgian armed forces to open fire on 7th of, and preparations were taking place for many, many months before that day, before 7th of August, but while authorizing army to opened fire on South Ossetian settlements, and then to moved in with the ground forces. Saakashvili, basically, at the time president of Georgia, reignite the civil war that was that had happened between between Ossetians and Georgians, basically. By the way, almost straight after Soviet Union collapse, right? And there was some pauses in the conflict, and conflict was reignited again, and then paused again. And there, for 2007, by the way, situation was quite calm before Saakashvili provoked the escalation. Locals, by the ordinary people, I mean Georgians and Ossetians, were on quite a good terms, right? There was not really much of a hostility in place, but unfortunately Saakashvili reignited this civil war. He bombed, by the way, he authorized these massive strikes on Trin Valley and other settlements to provoke Russia, obviously, because there was no military need to commit this war crime. From military standpoint, they did not really achieve much, right? But they wanted to demonstrate to Russia that, we are eliminating everything here and everybody, and, you have to get engaged. But Moscow did not get engaged right away, right? And until now, by the way, residents of South Ossetia are quite angry on Medvedev, president of Russian Federation at the time, because on 8th of August, a local defense force of local militiamen were basically fighting alone against almost entire Georgian army, right? But because Russia did not get engaged straight away, Saakashvili took another turn. He ordered Georgian troops to open fire directly on the Russian peacekeepers to provoke Russian reaction. And that's exactly what happened. Her base of peacekeepers, by the way, was obliterated by tank fire, artillery fire. Peacekeepers had no chance, by the way. Obviously, lightly armed and peacekeepers had no chance to withstand such a intense fire and attack from regular army that is armed with heavy equipment, right, or tanks, artillery, and so on. There was a significant number of casualties among Russian peacekeepers, and after this clear war crime and act of war was committed by Tbilisi, Medvedev, president of Russian Federation, actually issued an order to Russian army to get engaged, basically, with Georgian armed forces, and that's what happened. And for 12th of August, 13th of August, active phase of military confrontation was finished. And Saakashvili, by the way, very same Saakashvili who provoked this war, actually signed up for capitulation. That's what happened, right? But Western propaganda narrative is still the same until nowadays. Even Georgian government, by the way, current government acknowledged that this war was provoked by Saakashvili, right? But Western narrative is still the same. They are pushing this false narrative that it was unprovoked aggression of Russia. I mean, really learn some history. For God's sake, I'm saying this to Western so-called journalists. But they don't care about truth, by the way. They never did, right? And they are not even journalists. I don't believe there is even a single true journalist in Western media. Only in alternative media, by the way. You can find actual decent human beings that are reporting to public about relevant topics, right? But in Western MSM, you're not going to find even one decent human being, even one true journalist. That's my take. Also, dear friends, there was a fire on the board of USS New Orleans, LPD-18, while it was docked at the White Beach Naval Facility in Okinawa, Japan. You can see on your screen that vessel. No casualties were reported, at least no severe injuries were reported as a result of this incident, and details are not really known for now. No much is known what had happened with that vessel. Also, this morning I did share this information that pilot was safe after Super Hornet crash of Virginia Beach. For the context, this is a sixth F-16 that U.S. Navy lost in the last 10 months. I mean, there is a quite significant increase. Probably you also noticed this, isn't it? There is a quite significant increase in plane crashes when it comes to U.S. military aviation, Navy, Air Force, and so on. I don't know. This is due to poor maintenance of the military equipment, aging of their military equipment. Super Hornets, by the way, are quite old planes now. FA-18s, that is. Although, I mean, we all remember crashes of even F-35s that are basically brand new planes, right? And should be safe enough for pilots. But no, there's quite an increase in such accidents when it comes to military air force of US. And I wonder why. Is it a decline in the training of the pilots? It is poor maintenance of the equipment, or what the hell is going on there? I don't know, but clearly US is losing dozen and more planes and helicopters on year-on-year basis, which is not normal, really. But at least pilots survived, by the way, and probably he will have opportunity to crash another plane sometime in the future. RT is also reporting that Elon Musk shuts down Wall Street Journal's claim that he is abandoned political party plan. So Elon Musk has dismissed the Wall Street Journal's report claiming that he is quietly backing away from plans to launch his American Party. The newspaper said Musk had told allies he will focus on his businesses and not risk splitting Republican voters with a third party. And also, by the way, there was reports that Elon Musk will allied with J.D. Vance, right? And well, on this matter, I believe I have some short clip of J.D. Vance's response. So let's take a look at this report. For example, I mean, this short video.
It was, dramatic departure. And I know you know him well, you're good friends with him. But he said he's going to start a third party and not send everyone into the stratosphere. But he's since kind of backed off that. And now, according to the Wall Street Journal, he is considering backing you in 2028. I know you don't want to get ahead of the president. He's only 7 months into this. But would that be something you would welcome, certainly his staying in politics and perhaps supporting you down the road?
Yeah, so I saw the story, and as far as I can tell, the story is completely fake. I've never talked with Elon Musk or, frankly, any other donor about 2028. I do think that it would be a huge mistake for Elon to go forward with a third party. And my argument to him is, whether you like it or not, you are now perceived by the far left as on the side of the American right. You believe in law and order. You believe in closed borders. You believe in economic growth and prosperity. You believe in making things in the United States of America. The idea that Elon is ever going to go back to being sort of in the middle, where Democrats and Republicans both like him, that's just not going to happen. He's perceived as being on the American right. And so if he doesn't like things the Republican Party is doing, my advice to Elon would be, try to fix the Republican Party. Try to push it in your own way. Disagree with me all you want. Disagree with the President of the United States, but don't pretend that you can make a big difference with a third party. I think Elon would make a much bigger difference if he stayed loyal to President Trump's Republican Party. And if he had disagreements, express those disagreements from the inside as opposed to from the outside.
The New York Times.
So this is J.D. Vance's response. And well, based on what I hear, by the way, and what I read in the media, I will assume that maybe these rumors are actually correct, and Elon Musk, even though if he will continue with this idea of third party, will stay ally of J.D. Vance, and maybe he will become a main donor even of J.D. Vance in 2028. it's going to be, isn't it? Next presidential election. Who knows? Who knows? We will find out. But in any case, by the way, I really struggle to believe that Elon Musk is an independent player. I think there is a certain influential forces behind him. Otherwise, he would not be in the position that he is. And I think there is a quite high chance that behind the Elon Musk project are globalists. So Republicans too should be a little careful, or not Republicans, by the way. I don't want to go through political lines or party lines there, but U.S. conservatives, by the way, U.S. traditionalists. That will be a better way to say it. There should be a bit careful with Elon Musk, because I don't think he is a really traditionalist or the conservative, and I think there is a high probability that all this Elon Musk project is a product of the long-term operation of the globalists, right? Maybe I'm wronger. I don't really know much about US's internal politics. Neither I'm interested in, right? But that's my take. Share your opinion, dear friends. What you think about it? But nevertheless, just to have a certain influence, by the way, it will be clever policy on part of globalists if they actually are behind Elon Musk, if they will make him a major donor for the Republican Party or the candidates of the Republican Party, not just on a presidential level, but on a states level, right? And through Elon Musk and his group, well, globalists will have additional tools to influence the Republicans. And, do you see logic behind this? What I'm saying could be case. I don't know, but nevertheless, let me continue with some other news too, dear friends. And well, next report is about situation in UK when it comes to inflation. I spoke about this topic in yesterday's second live stream, but I think it's worth noticing again that UK inflation, according to Bloomberg, is at 18-month high, as food and transport cost is soaring, which is very unfortunate, by the way. Obviously, very unfortunate, because it's ordinary people like us that gonna feel this. By the way, I mean, as I do notice when price on something in store goes up, that's what ordinary citizens of UK are experiencing too. It's this inflation hits us, not the rich people, isn't it? So therefore, none of us should be happy that there is some economical issues in any of the Western countries that are hostile towards Russia due to criminal elites that they have, right? Ordinary people did nothing, by the way. They were not even asked, right? And I'm never going to consider ordinary people in any of these hostile countries to be enemies of ours. Their elites, their political class, for sure, are enemies of ours, but not the ordinary people. So this is sad news, actually. But that's what Bloomberg is reporting, and this is clearly a direct result of the incompetency and criminal activity, basically criminal policies of the UK. And no matter you are talking about Labour government or Conservative government, it's a uniparty, by the way, in UK also, as it is in many ways in US, and it's only to fool the people. This false choice has been created, right? Choose this or choose that or choose that. In reality, it's a uniparty behind all these so-called political groups. They are very same forces, by the way, right? Also, dear friends, I want to share with you this information that India's state-run refineries ramp up Russian oil buying. Despite the US criticism, Indian private energy companies never actually stopped buying Russian oil, but there was some pause in regards to state-run refineries. And we have now this information. India has resumed purchases of Russian oil, ignoring criticism from the United States. According to Bloomberg, state-owned companies, Indian Oil Corp and Bharat Petroleum Corp, purchased huge volumes of Russian oil, basically, for delivery in September and October. And this is New Delhi's answer, by the way, to the pressure from the White House. Right? Also, and I did explain my take, by the way, on current escalation between India and between US and India that was initiated by US. I don't think this escalation actually is connected with India buying Russian oil or being engaged in close cooperation with Russia. In reality, I believe what US wants by increasing tariffs and the pressure on India is to force companies, by the way, big companies, to transfer their manufacturing capabilities or manufacturing platforms from India to US. That's their main goal. And they're among companies, by the way, that are heavily invested in Indian economy, Indian industry, for example, companies like Apple, right? So we are talking about some very serious stuff. And even though Washington did not openly said that this is their goal to force leading companies worldwide to move their manufacturing plants from India to US, that is exactly the reason. And when it comes to oil market and their energy, well, US energy companies probably would love to replace Indian companies, right, as a mediator between Russian energy sector and the rest of the world to make tens of billions of dollars instead of India, right? But I'm quite sure this conflict definitely is not about Ukrainian crisis or their New Delhi-Moscow cooperation. Washington has some other reasons to be this hostile towards India. And also, by the way, on topic of India, we have this report that India approves 7.6 billion fighter jet purchase. So the Indian government has signed off $7.6 billion deal for domestically produced fighter planes. ANA News has reported, citing defense sources, their 97 Tejas Mark 1A light combat aircraft will be made by the state-run Hindustan Aeronautics Ltd, which manufactures fighter jets, helicopters, jet engines, and their avionics. Their acquisition will help their Indian Air Force replace their aging fleet of MiG-21s, which are scheduled to face the retirement in their coming weeks, according to ANA report. And well, congrats to Hindustan Aeronautics. They're gonna have a massive contractor, right, to produce Tejas planes, and it's a good plane, by the way. It's a domestically built plane. Definitely well capable to compete with the analogs, light fighter jets from neighboring countries with whom India might one day end up in a confrontation, and definitely well capable to replace MiG-21s, by the way, that are very old now. I mean, very older. I'm a bit surprised there, and many of you probably also, that Indian Air Force still maintains in service MiG-21s. They're great planes, by the way, for its time. MiG-21s, legendary planes, of course, from Mikoyan Gurevich Bureau, legendary bureau, by the way, of Soviet Union. But nevertheless, it's a very old planes now, right? It's 2025, so therefore they have to be replaced for sure. And they just definitely is a good choice. Why not? And this is a big push, obviously, big push for local aerospace industry for further development. Also, dear friends, RT is reporting that major US firms allegedly are lining up to return to Russia. According to industry leader, So US energy and IT giants are interested in returning to the Russian market, but a peace deal must be reached and sanctions lifted before that is possible. The head of the American Chamber of the Commerce in Russia has stated, and well, this is not the first time, and I think definitely not the last time when such information is become available. Statements are made about a queue of Western companies that cannot wait to come back to Russian markets. Many of them are registering their trademarks already and have registered from US and from Europe. And well, of course, cooperation is good, by the way. Cooperation is good. But I think only companies from the West should be allowed in Russia if they have not financed the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky and their armed forces, and have not make anti-Russian statements. And by the way, if they at least maintain certain level of presence on Russian markets. If companies left Russia completely and betrayed trust of Russian consumers, then those companies, no matter how big or famous they are, should not be allowed on Russian market back. My personal opinion, by the way, because if they betray trust of Russian consumers once, then what will stop them to do it again and again and again, right? So therefore, only companies that maintain one way or another, by the way, and many did, their presence on the Russian market should be allowed openly to come back. For others, door of Russian economy should be closed forever. That's what I think. I don't give a damn. Are they from US, from Europe, from whichever part of this world, by the way. If they betray trust of Russian consumers, they should not be allowed back. I think TASS news agency is also reporting that the Bank of Russia does not rule out a reduction of the key rate by the end of this year. And well, I hope Central Bank of Russian Federation will reduce key rate from current. It is 18 now, isn't it? From current 18 towards at least 15, 16 before end of this month. And hopefully that will happen. Central bank definitely can drop interest rate for another 2 point until 16 at least. That will definitely help Russian economy to regain momentum, because in this pursuit to cool down economy, Russian economical bloc actually was maybe too successful, right? And some additional energy, additional drive would be helpful for economy right now. And also, I have personal reasons to want to see drop in interest rates of the central bank, because I'm afraid I will have to take another loan in either towards the end of this month or the next month. And currently, by the way, loans are just too freaking expensive. If central bank will drop its interest rate, then commercial banks will do the same, and there maybe loans will be a little more accessible. So yes, and I believe there are many people here, by the way, in Russia, in a somewhat similar situation as I am, when you just need to take a loan, but you cannot because of the high interest rates, right? So it is what it is, man. So hopefully central bank will drop interest rate, not just before end of this year, but towards the end of this month also, right? And hopefully before end of this year, interest rate will be around 12%, maybe. That will do actually good for economy, I believe, and that will weaken Russian ruble a little bit, which is becoming too strong, by the way. That is harmful for economy, right? For federal budget, for economy in general, because it harms exporters and Russian economy is export-oriented economy, right? And also, I'm quite sure significant drop in key rate would not trigger inflation to go in double digits again, because companies already raised the prices, right? Already, by the way, when exchange rate between ruble and dollar was around 141, 110 for 1. And I believe government has every reasons and every tools in its disposal to issue a strong message to the businesses that, you know what, you're not gonna speculate on the matter too much. You have already risen your prices. You need to drop it when Russian ruble gets stronger. So therefore, don't dare to speculate on the prices now, or you will face the consequences. And if government will send strong enough message, then businesses will not dare to increase prices. They already did it, by the way, when exchange rate was 100 rubles for a dollar. And now exchange rate, right now, the difference is, let me give you latest on that. So that's the 80, by the way, 80 rubles for a dollar exchange rate for this moment, right? So if a central bank will drop interest rate, that will definitely would not escalate situation with inflation, at least in a massive way. What else do I have there, friends? Very interesting news that I want to share, and this is going to be last news for this news segment, that for the first time in history, woman has been appointed captain of the nuclear icebreaker. So for the first time in history, a woman, Marina Starovoitova, has become a captain of the nuclear icebreaker Yamal Project 10521, part of the federal state unitary enterprise Atom Float, Rosatom Enterprise. This was announced at the gala concert in honor of 18th anniversary of the Russian nuclear industry. And well, congrats to Marina Starovoitova. A great achievement, by the way, of course, to be first. Well done. Well done. And when it comes to Russian nuclear icebreaker fleet, by the way, of course, Russia is leading the world big way, right? And more nuclear icebreakers are about to enter service in Rosatom fleet, which is or Atom Float fleet, by the way, which is a great deal because of the Northern Sea route, by the way, which is a great deal for all of the world, because as time goes by and temperature on this planet continues to increase, definitely Northern Sea route is gonna gain more and more attraction, by the way, and due to global instability, especially in areas where currently main maritime routes are passing through. I think as time goes by, I mean, give it 5, 10, 15 years, and businesses worldwide and shipping companies will divert their focus from current main shipping lines towards the Northern Sea route. For sure, and Northern Sea route is just destined to become a main trade route for this planet for 21st and potentially for follow-up centuries, right? So that's how it is. Great news, positive news, by the way. So I will end there this news segment on this positivity. And well, hopefully you did find a news segment informative and useful. A lot of news, isn't it? A lot of news. I think all of them are important and interesting. Hopefully you will agree with me. And if so, dear friends, please like the video if you have not yet. And I guess there was no super chat on Rumble. There was no donation during the stream, so I don't really have anything to highlight. I will just join community chat for a minute or two, and yes, that's about it for for this live stream. I will remind you that this evening, if there will be no technical issues, this evening, 10 p.m. Moscow time, most likely I will have a guest, by the way, during the live stream, expert that many members of our community are familiar. Um, I'm not gonna make any further announcements. Uh, because I want to make sure that everything will work out, right? So that's being said, dear friends. Well, I will join community chat now. If I see any question or topic directed to me, I will react on it. Sorry, dear friends, if I unwillingly miss your question. Quite often, some members of community are, expressing their unhappiness that I did not react on their question. But yet again, I'm just scrolling, isn't it, through chat as fast as I can. Live stream is already, by the way, 1 hour and 41 minutes. I'm a bit tired, right? And as I said, I never said that I'm gonna go through literally every single commentary during the live stream itself. After the live stream, yes, but not during the live stream, right? And because it will take another 1.5, 2 hours, right, to read literally every comment in the chat. But I'm scrolling fast. If I spot the question, good, I'm reacting on it. If not, then sorry. But some members, even though I explained this quite a few times, some members of the community are nevertheless are mad at me. Why you ignore my question? I did not ignore. It's a big difference between not seeing the question or ignoring, right? I don't ignore no questions. Why would I, by the way? If question is written in a polite manner, if it's written with normal language, why would I ignore it? I don't get it. I see Cat Stone is commenting. It's a Washington D.C. that wants the war. Most Americans really don't. I will agree with you that most Americans most likely don't want U.S. to be engaged in any war, proxy war or direct war. But well, when it comes to Washington, when it comes to neocons, by the way, and their allies, they are all about wars, isn't it? They are all about wars. This is for sure. And if U.S. leadership right now is actually genuine on the topic of de-escalating in Russia, that does not mean that they are against wars in general, because very same leadership of U.S. is actively supporting Israel to commit genocide of the Palestinian people. So no one can claim that U.S. administration is actually for peace. It's not true, by the way, right? U.S. leadership has every tool in its disposal to force Israeli regime to stop this genocide, but Washington is doing nothing, literally nothing. By the way, even encouraging Israel to do more, which is insane, isn't it? Which is insane. So I agree with you, Kate, absolutely. Matthew K is asking, Levan, do you feel that their air defense in southern Russia is depleted because lately Ukrainians had a lot of success? No, no. Kiev regime's forces. First of all, I would not say that this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky had any success. What you call success, by the way? Did there one or two drones from hundreds that Kiev regime is launching on or thousands even on weekly basis? Did some of those drones manage to bypass air defense systems and struck in certain areas? Yes, it happens, right? Because no air defense system in this world are capable of intercepting 100% of aerial targets constantly, 100% at a time, right? It's just technically not possible. Even relatively small Israel, with it's one of the best air defense systems, right, is incapable to protect airspace from all the aerial targets constantly. And what to say about biggest country in this world that Russia is, right? So therefore, I will use different words. Definitely not a success to characterize strikes that Kiev regime is conducting. What I can say is that it is clearly noticeable that NATO and the NATO proxy Kiev regime is more focused on southern Russia. They are targeting southern Russian regions with much more drones than it was happening, let's say, like 5, 6, 7 months ago, or in the far past, right? But to say that Russian air defense systems are depleted, this is a very strong statement. And if you don't have an actual database, if you don't have actual numbers, I don't think you can make such a claim, right? I would not. Russian air defense systems intercepting majority of drones, right, on regular basis, and that's all I can say. I don't think Kiev regime will ever be in a position to deplete Russian air defense systems, especially now, by the way, when mobile air defense systems have been introduced big time, right? And already videos are circulating on internet when instead of air defense systems that are using quite expensive missiles to intercept targets, mobile groups are deploying that are using other means for interception, right? And quite effectively. And so Kiev regime and NATO have even less chances now to actually deplete air defense systems of Russia. Also helicopters actively are used, by the way, for interceptions, right? And we are talking about, when it comes to these drones that Kiev regime and NATO are launching, this is aircraft type low speed aerial targets, right? Their speed is like 150, 200, 300 kilometers max, right? Even helicopters, Ta-52s and Mi-28s are well capable to outrun those drones and to intercept. And it is also relatively easy to intercept for ground-based or these mobile groups that are using high caliber machine guns and the guns for interceptions. So therefore, chances of the NATO and the Kiev regime to deplete Russian air defense systems with these drone attacks are even less now than it was, let's say, 5 months ago, for example. It took quite a long, surprisingly, by the way, it took quite a long before Russian side introduced these mobile groups, right? But it was done eventually, right? And it will make it easier, of course, to protect Russian Federation from these aerial attacks. But unfortunately, time to time, yes, some drones do bypass air defense systems, and most often than not are targeting civilian areas. But there are also occasions when they are targeting oil depots, some manufacturing plants, and so on. But yet again, no air defense system in this world can actually intercept 100% of aerial targets always. It's just technically not possible. Number 6 is commenting, dear Levaner, I like communism, but have only seen life in one communist country. What warnings do you have for people about communism? Well, I mean, this is when it comes to ideological stuff, it is better, of course, to have a conversation with someone that has studied the subject, right? And is an expert in the field. I'm definitely not a political scientist, right? So my opinion on communism or any other ideology is irrelevant, I will say. But well, I don't like communism, by the way. That I can tell, because I think when state begins to control everything, by the way, and eventually that's what communist regimes all over the world are doing, by the way. We have quite a number of examples. Now one may argue that, well, China, look at China, by the way. They are doing things differently. They are allowing private business to exist. They have some certain level of freedom of speech and so on. And yes, this is true, partially, isn't it? But nevertheless, it's a state-controlled economy still, by the way, right? In China, although with a significant autonomy. And I don't think this is the way to go forward. Nothing to be said about 100% state-control economy that we had in the Soviet Union, for example, and it did not really work. And I believe, by the way, yet again, my knowledge on the subject is definitely not enough to have strong opinions. But I believe Stalin, by the way, when he talked to leadership, Stalin was actually not against small and medium businesses. He did not wanted state to control everything. And for some time, private enterprises were actually existed, by the way, and were quite successful during the Stalin's leadership, right? But then these ideological psychopaths overrun this way of thinking, and they began pushing for total control, right? And it did not really work well, I will say. I'm a believer in free market economy, and I think state only has to get involved when business is becoming not a middle, not a small or medium, but actually big, right? Because in that case, influence of these big companies will be risky for society's safety, right? And you don't want some businesses to have or businessmen to have more influence on the policies of your country than elected officials, right? So therefore, I think state should be in control of big businesses, but small and medium business should be left alone, right? Once medium business if successful, reaches the point when it's no longer can be considered medium, it's big business, then state should have its representative in the management of this business, right? To make sure that state business not going to cross certain lines. But yet again, I'm not an expert in this field, by the way, and I don't really have anything good to say about communists, really. I'm acknowledging that Soviet Union had achieved tremendous progress, by the way, right? Tremendous progress in terms of pulling out people, tens of millions of people from poverty, in terms of education, to educate the people, right? In terms of industrializing, conducting this industrialization and so on, in terms of scientific achievements, right? Soviet Union definitely had a great deal of achievements, but I will say that was achievements of the Soviet people, not the communists, because not the Communist Party, let me say, right? And some people may disagree with me, but yet again, I don't have nothing to say good about communists, man. And they were traitors too, right? Bolsheviks were traitors, by the way. That's what I think. Bolsheviks that committed revolution were traitors. They committed treason against the Russian Empire, by the way. And let's call them what they were. They were traitors of their country, right? As a result of their treason, millions of people died in a civil war. So, what do you expect? What else can I say about it? I have no sympathies for communists, man. No. And once Soviet Union was established, you guessed who betrayed the people of Soviet Union again and destroyed the country? Communists, by the way. That yet again, freaking Bolsheviks and the communists. Gorbachev, Shevardnadze, and the rest of the garbage, by the way. Right? So, and leadership, take a look at the leadership of the Soviet Communist Party. When you have Khrushchev as a leader, by the way, after Stalin, by the way, there was no decent human being in leadership of that party, right? And Stalin, by the way, it's a controversial figure, of course. Some say he was a monster, some say he was a great leader, but no matter what you're gonna say, main strong points that Russia has right now, after so many decades since Stalin era, is exactly their наследие of Stalin. How you say наследие, by the way? Let me translate. It's a legacy, by the way. It's a legacy of the Stalin's era. And what I mean by that is that, well, Russia is a member of a permanent member of the Security Council, right? How come? Because of the, Soviet Union that and Stalin, right? Because of the Stalin, this happened during his reign, right? And Russia has nuclear weapons, main deterrent of the country, and this is also legacy of the Stalin regime, by the way. Stalin's regime, right? Nuclear weapons were built in Soviet Union during the Stalin. In 47 was first test in Soviet Union, or 49. I can't remember exact date right now, but it was still Stalin, by the way, right? And so yes, there was great achievements and everything, but under what cost? Of course, this is a big question. And yet again, Bolsheviks and the communists betrayed the Russian Empire, right? People of Russian Empire, by the way. And as a result of collapse of empire, so many people died. Millions of people died, by the way. And very same, not literally same, but descendants of, let's say, ideological descendants of very same Bolsheviks and the communists, by the way, betrayed people of Soviet Union, right, too, and destroyed the country, as a result of which also hundreds of thousands of people died, by the way. Millions of people have died, actually, right? And tens of millions of people went through extremely difficult times. And I will argue current Ukrainian crisis is also a result of treasonous policies of the Bolsheviks and the communists. So, yet again, you or many other members of our community may don't like what you are hearing from me here in regards to Bolsheviks and communists, but I don't like them. I don't support them. I consider them to be traitors, historically. I have nothing good to say about them. And all the achievements of Soviet Union was achievements of the Soviet people. Achievement of the Soviet people. Let's not downgrade this key moment, key point, right? Socialism is a different stuff, isn't it? I am a left liberal. That either I'm a social democrat, you can say, but communism is extremism is never good, by the way, and communism is an extreme form of left leaning ideology, and these extremes, either on the left or right, are never good stuff, by the way. And history have taught us that many times. Matthew K is also asking, Levan, I know that President Putin always comes out good even when his decisions are questionable, like that Alaska summit. Well, I mean, I have to disagree with you, Matthew, straight away. I mean, it turned out that this decision to go to Alaska was actually at least partial success, right? Because since then, at least for now, it seems like Washington is actually on the same page with Russia when it comes to this demand of the globalists about a ceasefire and some temporary measures. And seems like Washington is also pushing for a sustainable peace. They might not be honest. We just don't know. Maybe they are just playing some games, Trump, Rubio, Vance, and the rest of them. But at least in their public statements, they are on the same page with us, right? With Russia, because Moscow also wants sustainable peace, not some temporary measures, by the way, right? So therefore, I would argue that your assumption that his visit to Alaska was questionable, I would not agree with that assumption. At the time, maybe, before we knew what results going to be. But right now, it is obvious that, well, he made the right decision, right? Will he accept her? True that most Russians now don't want Istanbul Plus. Will he accept true that most Russians now don't want Istanbul Plus? First of all, we don't know what most Russians want. I don't know. I live in Russia, by the way. I have no freaking idea what most Russians want. What we know, what we want for sure, I mean, 100%, majority of us, vast majority, is this conflict to end on Russian terms, that is with unconditional surrender of the enemy, right? This is our victory. This is victory of Russia, right? And this end of the conflict may happen only on Russian terms. That's what majority of us here in Russia will agree on. But when it comes to Istanbul Plus or Minsk Free and that kind of terminology, you think people, ordinary people, by the way, in day-to-day life, really are thinking in these terms? Istanbul Plus or Minsk Free, and no, man. It's much more direct than that. We want victory. We are winning, by the way. Russian militaries did everything they could to give to Russian people and Russia this victory in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, and that's how it is. So I'm not sure I do understand the essence of your question. And what Putin have to accept? I mean, Putin and the majority of Russian society are on the same page. We want victory, by the way. We achieved this victory. Our great military did it, by the way, for Russia, right? And that's it. We want this conflict to end on our terms, and it will. So that's how it is. What Putin have to accept or not accept? I mean, you know. Also, Matthew is quite active today. Also, Matthew is asking Levan, we see that the Georgian government is remaining strong. Do you think Georgia is very, very slowly moving towards Russia again? No, no. Georgian people are waking up, by the way, and realizing that collective Western or Western elites, let's say, right, Western ruling class is not their friend, never was their friend, and many more and more people, by the way, are realizing that the very same Western ruling class actually used Georgia, abused Georgia, and sacrificed Georgia, and will sacrifice it again whenever opportunity comes. And that's why, because the government of Georgia, current ruling party, Georgian Dream, is monitoring their, society's mood. They are emboldened, by the way. They are more emboldened to maintain policies that will be based on Georgian national interests, right? And in Georgian national interests, in fundamental interest of the Georgian people, there was never war with either South Ossetia, either Abkhazia or Russia, by the way. In best interest of Georgian people, there was always peace, right? Peace and peaceful development. And that's exactly what is happening under the current leadership, right? First time, I mean, just imagine, by the way, since the collapse of Soviet Union, first time Georgia had a decade of peace. For someone who lives somewhere in middle of Switzerland, by the way, this phrase may not be that telling because they never actually experienced a war, right? At least in past number of decades. But for Georgia, it is very important that under the current ruling party, Georgian Dream, which can be criticized for a number of reasons, but nevertheless, under the current regime of Georgian Dream, country and society had their first time decade plus of peaceful development. And this is tremendously important, by the way, isn't it? For success story of any country, you need to have a peace to move forward. So it's not about Georgia moving towards Russia, but it's more about Georgian government being emboldened by their own public, by their own people, to base their policies on actual national interests of the Georgia. And therefore, obviously, Tbilisi is trying to maintain with its neighbors good working relationships, right? Because they need peace, they need prosperity. And while doing so, because of the criminal nature and predator nature of the Western elites, relationships between Tbilisi and the Western capitals are worsening, because Georgian leadership was very clear that Western representatives of these Western so-called elites openly, by the way, were demanding from Tbilisi to open a second front and sacrifice people of Georgia and the country itself. So you see what's happening. It's not about Georgia moving towards Russia, but it's about Georgian policies being based on Georgia's national interests, which, objectively speaking, directs government to improve relationships with all the neighbors, including Russia. That's all it is. But Western propaganda gonna tell you that, well, Georgia is moving towards Russia, and look at them, how dare they are implementing this foreign agent law or something that US has, by the way. And Georgian law is about foreign agents, for example, is almost exact copy of the US one. But somehow it is okay for US, but not for Georgia to know which NGOs and from which country are receiving funds and for what purposes. So no. And by the way, if you ask me, it is in the best interest of the Georgian people, obviously, to further improve relationships with Russia, 100%. And one should keep in mind that Georgian people, as a people, by the way, with their own identity, their own language, culture, and traditions, exist only because of Russia. We should keep that in mind, by the way. In northern western part of Turkey, in the Black Sea area, by the way, actually more Georgians are living than in Georgia itself. ethnic Georgians. But those ethnic Georgians are completely assimilated by Turkey. They lost their religion of their ancestors. They are no longer Orthodox Christians, by the way. They are converted to Islam, and vast majority of them have no freaking idea what being a Georgian means, right? They don't know Georgian language, Georgian traditions, nothing that makes you Georgian. And only reason why Georgia and Georgian people still exist, by the way, is Russia, because it was Russia that fought Turkey and basically saved Georgia from complete occupation by Turkey and complete assimilation. And this is true, by the way, for many small nations of former Russian Empire or the Soviet Union. I am a Georgian Ossetian, by the way, right? So I can tell you that it's, in my opinion, it's not that Georgians were saved by Russia and Russian people, but also Ossetians, by the way, descendants of Skytho-Sarmatian civilization or Alans, right? Both these nations that are my people were saved by Russia. So obviously it is in the best interest of both people to have a good working and friendly and strategic relationships with Russia. Ossetians know this, by the way, and North Ossetia Alania Autonomous Republic is a proud member of the Russian Federation, right? And I think more and more people in Georgia also are realizing that if you get rid of their propaganda, right, these Western narratives and their Western propaganda, then you will realize that definitely Russia is a country that Georgia should keep great relationships with. That's my answer to you. Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levan, China's government is capitalism, not a communist at all. Well, they have, formally they are communists, right? They have one party governance. Formally they are communists, but in reality, yet again, nowadays, by the way, I don't think there is that many true believers in communism ideology, right? And China is no exception. I don't think all they believe is in, I guess, national interests as they see it, Chinese leadership. They are just using current system, right? This one-party system, because it does make the decision-making process easier, more effective, right? But when it comes to economy is not really like free economy. It's not really free market, but it's partially free market, right? You can do business in China, yes, but if and when necessary, government will take over, and government will have its presence being filled in your business, right? Whenever they want it. So I understand what you are talking about, but same time, formally at least they called communist, isn't it? It's Chinese Communist Party. And also Nidish is commenting, Lemon, we should have both state-owned and private-owned businesses for every product. Well, I believe, by the way, pharmaceutical sector that makes drugs, by the way, should be completely state-controlled. I don't think private businesses should be allowed there in that field at all, right? Because private companies, they intend to do business, right? They want money, they want profit. And who gives you guarantees that very same companies will not create a disease then to sell you drugs for it? Do you have any, and who knows how many times those drug companies actually did that? Remember, I don't know how old are you, Nidish, but I'm 48 almost, right? And I remember well when I was kid, by the way, maybe once a year I would get flu. Maybe once a year, maybe not. Nowadays, by the way, nowadays, like on year-on-year terms, we are catching flu virus at least 3-4 times. And how that is possible? You tell me. How this is possible? You know, my explanation, and this might be conspiracy theory, but my explanation is that these pharmaceutical companies are generating, are synthesizing the viruses, right, against which we don't really have a immunity, and they are spreading those viruses, and then they are selling drugs against it. That's what I really believe, by the way, is happening, because otherwise there is no logical explanation how come that 30 years ago we might get flu once a year. That's it, right? When you get flu, by the way, you know that that year you would not catch no virus again. But now if you get flu, by the way, you might catch another flu virus in 2 weeks time. And that means, by the way, that another flu virus is different than previous one, because otherwise your body will have antibodies, right? You will have antibodies in you if that virus was a mutation from this one. Am I correct? And you will not get sick because of these antibodies. But those viruses have to be different, by the way. They have to be different strains. And only in that case, you will catch the flu again and again and again, like 3, 4, 5 times a year. And this is not natural. This is not normal, by the way. Otherwise, this would be the case always, forever. But this is the case only in last couple of decades, right? So you see, I think pharmaceutical and medicine should be state controlled. Absolutely. There should be no private companies there. And I don't think bigger multinational corporations should exist. That's it, period, by the way. Small and medium business, yes, but once you get, once you are no longer can be designated as a small business, to make sure that your influence not going to interfere with the policies of the state, to make sure that you're not going to get too influential, state have to come in and header its management, its representatives in your business to keep you in check. That's my take, by the way. This might not be ideal way to deal with the big business, but do you like what is happening in the Western countries? Do you like what is happening in US, when literally multinational corporations and these private groups, basically, of influence are deciding who will be the president, who will be the senator, who will be the congressman, who will be the head of this state and that state, who will be represented in these local parliaments in different states of US, and same goes for Europe, isn't it? I don't think business should be that influential. So therefore, big business should not exist at all. Only under the strict state control. But small and medium business, be free, do your business. And there is certain sectors that private business should not be allowed. Pharmaceutical, by the way, medicine should be completely state controlled and run, because it cannot be based on profits, by the way. You cannot base healthcare system on profits. Otherwise, you're going to end up in some dodgy stuff there for sure, as it is the case right now, by the way, worldwide. All these pharmaceutical companies, all of them are criminal organizations, in my personal opinion, and engaged in a dodgy stuff, criminal activity. Harry C5 Myth is also asking, and dear friends, if I may, I will end this live stream on this question. High level are Mr. Putin's ex-wife and the children public figures in Russia? Do average people know who they are? Would they be recognized in the streets, or do they live completely privately? No, they are. I mean, of course, they are public figures in a way that they are members of the Putin's family, right? But while saying so, I don't mean by public figures as they've been on a TV screen day in, day out, or ever. They are never seen, almost, by the way, maybe with very few exceptions, they are almost never seen on a screen. They are not engaged in public discourse. They are not using that, their family ties with the Russian president to get famous or something like that. No, they are keeping their private life. If you want to, you can definitely learn some more about these people, but they are not interfering in the policies in any way, shape, or form. They are keeping, they are staying out of politics, right? I know one of the daughters of president are successful, quite successful young lady in the scientific field, and like a year or 2 years ago, there was even and the media paid attention to it. Otherwise, she herself did not really were looking for some attention, but media did pay attention to the success of her in scientific field. And another one, if I'm not mistaken, by the way, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not really do any research on the matter, because it's I'm not interested basically. But relatively recently, I read or hear that another one is also engaged in some work to basically encourage foreign investments into Russian economy, something like that. But because I did not really pay much attention to it, I don't know specifics, right? So that's the answer, by the way. If I met on the street any of the daughters of Russian president, would I recognize them? No, because they are public figures only because they are members of their president's family. But yet again, they are public figures not because they are being seen on a TV on regular basis and being advertised or something like that. No. So therefore, I might see them on the streets and I will never recognize them, right? With the exception of a former wife of Putin, probably I will recognize her. Probably, or I'm not sure, by the way. I'm not even sure about that, but that's the answer. They are not engaged in any way, shape, or form in meddling in the politics inside the country, and they are not using their family ties with the president to create for themselves, set some sort of a trampoline to become some next political leaders of the country or anything. If you that mean this in your question, I don't think any of the kids of Russian president are interested in politics whatsoever. Or to become a politician, let's say that way. And dear friends, this is it for today's Q&A. Thank you very much for your questions, for your comments, for your time and attention. If you like the video, dear friends, please consider to support my work. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And before I go, let me remind you that most likely at 10 p.m. this evening, I will have a second live stream with a guest. And hopefully everything will work out and you will like the stream. That's it for now. Have a wonderful day, dear friends, and take care.